Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. This is Gail, Gail Carriger, that's me. We're doing a May Live 2021, and I have a bunch of very fun questions from some of the Parasol Protectorate group. And then once I've done those, we will take any questions you tuning in might have. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time, I hope. So, as usual, I'd love to know when you are tuning in from. Ooh, I got twangy there for a second. Let me know where you're tuning in from if you would like to, just because it gives me a thrill to know that this funny little thing I'm doing is reaching globally. For some reason, it makes me so excited to see that. But first, I promised that there would be a mini teacup talk, because I have a new teacup, which I'm deeply excited about, because it is loud and garish, and it makes me very happy. So, are you ready to meet the teacup? Here it is. Oh, she says, breaking it. Right, here it is. This is the teacup. Isn't it crazy? Yeah, I'm very into it. It has iridescence, which is what you call that pearlescent thing that some glasses get. The glaze is a glass. It's a liquid. And so that is actually a sign of damage most of the time. It's not intentional. It is intentional, of course, in lusterwares and stuff. So this one is broken. The saucer is broken, and it was given to me broken, which is why I'm using it, because I don't really care if it breaks more. But I thought it was such a trippy design with the like cut throughs and everything that I just wanted to share it with you. It's also very fall or something in coloration. It's not really appropriate for spring, but that is the teacup that I will be using today. I have a little thermos of chai that I brought, so I will be drinking chai from this beautiful little teacup-y thing, and spilling tea all over myself, because, hey, why wear a white skirt and not get it covered in tea, right? Life. All right. Hello, my dears. Moving, my goodness. That's always fun. So sorry, people are chiming in with where they're tuning in from. I hope you all can hear me. I think you can, because you're responding to me in the comments. As usual, please hold your questions for a little while, and I'll take the questions that I gathered ahead of time first. And then we'll do questions. And yeah, so shall we get started? Now that everyone's got their tea, we're good? Okay. So the first question is, it's been a year. What good, and it has been a year, that's been a bit more than a year. What good and bad has COVID brought to me as an author and to my process? Well, I made no, secrets about the fact that I kind of lost creativity for a while there, and I was, very much struggling with just writing anything. I even stopped reading, which I haven't done in a very long time. I have done that before, though. I have stopped writing and stopped reading before, so I do know that I can get it back. So I knew it wasn't kind of a permanent thing, but it was a little concerning for a while there. I just sort of lay around on the couch and watched a lot of dramas and comedies. I'm sort of back out of that now. I did NaNoWriMo, and that kind of helped me. And I wrote that one Vixen Ecology short story, and that sort of sparked me to get back into it. And then I wrote Y Axon, which I am not going to spell for you, but that's the techno fantasy. And I finished that out at the end of the year, and now I'm back to writing again. So I kind of had a mini retreat out of medical necessity, not mine, somebody else's, and that's pretty much put me back to normal, I think, in most ways. But yeah, it wasn't easy. I mean, like everybody else, I was dealing with illnesses and crises, and yeah, it wasn't awesome. That's for sure. But I do feel a little bit like things are getting better, in the writing world at least. Another question was, any extra ways we can support authors during this time? I heard the book sales are high and I would love to keep this up. Book sales are high in certain arenas, which is wonderful. Thank you guys for reading and for buying books. I hope the books have helped you. That's what I ended up reading, was books that really helped me. I did a lot of comfort reading and I did a lot of rereading of old favorites. Like I have said before, the nicest thing you can do to an author is review their book. Like, just tell the world how much you love it. Recommending it to your friends or somebody else who you think might like it. That's how authors have careers, is because people talk about their books with other people and share the love, which I know does not come naturally to introverts, but that is how we have careers. So that's the nicest thing you can do. If the author is around on social media or whatever, you can always drop them a line and say, hey, I love your stuff, or I love this character, or whatever it is. It makes us all feel better. You for having said it, and us for having received a compliment. So I hope. That's the nicest thing you could do for an author, is just leave them a review. And it doesn't have to be like a big exhaustive thing. I think the word review is daunting to some people, but you can, places like Amazon or Goodreads or BookBub or whatever will let you just say a sentence like, I love this book, it was funny and it made me laugh, or whatever. Like, you don't have to go overboard. The review itself is always great. So the next question, how do I balance, this is a hard question. So how do I balance what my brain wants to write, or my heart, depending, and what my fans want me to write, and what my agent or my publisher wants me to write? And I'm taking this one first because I moved this question up the rotation because it kind of has to do with the previous question about surviving COVID as a writer from a writer perspective. And that's because I got so derailed last year that I pretty much was willing to write anything that moved me. Eventually I was like, I can't. So I had to delay a deadline, which I've only ever had to do once before, and that was under extremely different circumstances. So I had to delay the Agatha book deadline because it was not the book I wanted to write. I frankly didn't want to write anything. But when I did want to write, the only thing that moved me was that Vixen Ecology story, which is this sort of darkly atmospheric thing that's not my normal style anyway. And you can only get a hold of that if you are a member of my newsletter. Because it is such a tie-in story, you kind of have to know the San Andreas universe to really appreciate the story at all. So I just didn't want to release it out into the world. I don't think the world at large would get it. So I kept it to my newsletter only. So I did that, and then once I did that, that kind of pushed me in, and then the techno fantasy just kind of took over my brain, and those were the only characters who wanted to talk to me. Mars was the only character who really wanted to talk to me. And sorry, I sound a little schizophrenic, but that's how I think about characters. So Mars, who's the main character of that book, was like, me. And so I just wrote that book. Even though it was not in the rotation, it's a Tinkered Stars book, but it doesn't really tie to the fifth gender or anything else. So yeah. But it's what wanted to be written. And that is not normally how I function, but because I was struggling to write anything, I just wrote the thing that wanted to be written for a change. And it was fun. It was very freeing and very good. And now I'm back and now I'm fine again. So I switched from that to Agatha and finished that book fine in my usual style. So I seem to be back in the saddle, so to speak. So this balance then is what I want to write, which is what's moving me at the time, what you guys want me to write, and then what my agent or my publisher wants me to write. And that is very interesting, considering I just had a conversation with my agent about if I were going to write something for a traditional publisher, what that thing should be, and what publishing is kind of buying right now, and that sort of thing. It was a great conversation. I am lucky enough to have an agent that I can have those kinds of conversations with. And the answer is I tend to do about 3 projects a year, and I try to make those 3 projects be exactly that. something for me that's just a play project or for fun or something a little outside of the box, something for you, which is a story or a parasol verse or a thing that I know people are really interested in, the next one in a series, that kind of thing, and then something that a traditional publisher is kind of interested in or might be, and that can be Subterranean Press, who's a small press that I work with, or it could be one of my larger publishers, depending on, you know, kind of where I am career-wise and how I feel. I have that luxury because I've you know, I'm 12 years as an author now, and I have a very receptive, awesome reader base who's willing to give me a try when I do something experimental. Thank you. So I can afford to be a little more risky than other authors are. But kind of what I bring out every year is kind of indicates how I'm trying to strike that balance. And yeah, so I guess that's the answer to that. The answer to that is I try to tread the balance until the world folds in upon itself, and then I fold in upon myself, and then I write something very strange, which doesn't balance at all, but oh well. We'll see. The next question is the publishing world starting to recover from tariffs, supply shortages? So we talked about this a couple of lives ago. I was talking about how there's a paper shortage, and so there was some print book delays. There was a flood of new books hitting the market in September because publishers and printing presses had delayed. You know, it does seem to have all sorted itself out. Yay! Yeah, I haven't heard anything about delays on the production end of the spectrum. In other words, you should be able to get the book you're interested in the format that you want at this juncture, from me and others, so long as it's listed as available. So that's the world from your end of the spectrum, from our end of the spectrum, if there are any authors out there, there do seem to be delays in manuscript submissions. So if you have something on submission, if you're querying agents or an editor, even if you have a manuscript that's under edit, so it's already been accepted, and everything seems to be very slow out of New York publishing at the moment. And this is just doggerel I'm hearing from the gossip from my author friends. I don't have anything on submission at the moment, so yeah, it just seems that the front end of production in the book world seems to have come back up, but the back end, for those of us who are authors, seems to have bogged down a little bit. And that might be just a flood of new manuscripts because people did a lot of writing over the last year, or it might be that, you know, there are mergers going on in New York right now and things are just a little chaotic. So that's the publishing industry. The next question is, so now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. So some of you who have asked questions already, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take questions just yet. I will soon, I promise. But I might be about to answer some of those questions. So the first question is the San Andreas Shifter series. So this is for those who don't know, I have 3 series. We're not going to talk about one of them, which is this one, my urban fantasy series that's set in contemporary Bay Area, but with shifter creatures. It's this one, and most recently this one. Obviously most recently, because you can see I only have an arc myself, although the print edition is available. So those are the 3 books in the San Andreas series as it currently stands. There is a 4th book in the works, but that's a very loose way of putting it. It's called the Drotzie Dilemma. It has a title, which means it has an ISB and metadata and everything. So I'm going to have to write it, but it is not written. So I cannot make any promises on when it will be out. However, obviously it's called the Drotzie Dilemma, so if you've read this one, you know what the main character is, because he makes his appearance here. And he's Drotzie, and because of that, it's going to definitely explore the water shifter world of the San Andreas universe. I'm very excited about that. I'm a big fan of swimming and water and ocean swimming and diving through waves and all that sort of thing. So I'm excited to write characters with that. And because it's also going to have some reveals about your favorite merman. So I think you're going to enjoy it, but it's not written yet, although clearly I have some ideas about where I want to go with it. So that is the San Andreas universe. I would say not this year. that would be very unlikely. Maybe next year, but not this year for the Drotzie Dilemma. Sorry. Blame the plague. Everything is the plague's fault. The next question is this one. The inevitable fifth gender. So I did write fifth gender as a standalone. It has a self-concluding story, but people still want more of Tristal and Dre, the main characters from this series. This is the Tinkered Stars series, which is my science fiction series. So I also have an idea for another book. It would be another sort of slightly cozy mystery-y book. It would have these two, but it wouldn't be as much of a romance. It would be kind of more of a mystery because they're together, and I'm not going to split them apart. They're together. So I have an idea for a second one. So, but I haven't, again, I have the idea for it, but I haven't written on it, and it's not in the schedule yet. But there is it will come, one hopes, eventually. So this book is in this book's universe, which is the Tinkered Stars universe. Don't try to find this. It only exists as a Kickstarter. The print edition of Cartwright only existed as for the Kickstarter. There's an audiobook of it. This ties to the project that I'm currently writing. So I am actually currently writing something in this universe, but it doesn't actually explicitly tie to either of the books that are already published in the universe, because that makes sense. But again, I'm writing what I want to write and what currently is moving me. And apparently what's currently moving me is a very in-depth interest in the machinations of the entertainment industry and how aliens could take over the universe if they just had the right entertainment system, basically. So yeah, I'm having a grand old time with a really fun musical entertainment system based aliens series. So we'll see. I think it's great. I watch too much K-pop. That's probably what happened to me. So that's those two, which brings us to those of you who get the newsletter know, but the next book that is coming out that I do promise you will be out and should be out this year is the third in this series, which is the Delightfully Deadly series. So we have this book, which is the first one, this one, which is the second one, and the third one is going to come out. So that is your Parasolverse book for this year, and it's done. I've written it, so it just has to go through the publication process. So that was the one I was late on because it is due to a publisher. So but I will talk more about that when I have a date, but it is happening. So that is the 3 universes. You just got an update on all 3 of them. The next question I have is, how do I pick my characters? Somebody wants a Lord Akaldama story. We've talked about that before. And another 5th gender. Just talked about that. Purple aliens. How do I pick my characters? Well, the character like Mars, who's the main character of the techno fantasy, just happened. He's floppy and adorable, and I love him. And then Fax, who is the character in the musical one that I'm writing right now. That musical is not the right term. Aliens want us for our singing. Fax is completely different. He's like he's a refugee character. He's very reserved. He's very kind of private. His is a journey of a true journey of finding family. Like, he belongs nowhere and to no one, and this is him figuring out where he belongs and finding his people, his little crew. So they're just completely different personalities, and it's just, I don't know. The personality just starts talking to me, and there it is. So yeah, but that's how I pick them. They want it. They start waking me up in the middle of the night with ideas and sentences. Usually what happens to me, and I talk about this as knowing when I can start to write something, is I have what I call an epiphany, which is usually two characters in conversation, and I see them in my head like it's a movie, and that's when I know I can write a book, is when I have that moment. And until I have that moment, the books exist as kind of ideas in the sidelines. And when I have that moment, I usually write it down. So, I'll come to a project and there's usually like 1 or 2 scenes that have sort of crystallized in my head, and then I start, coming up with the bones of the story and everything. So yeah, I need the epiphany moment before I can write something. So it's not really a character, it's that epiphany that makes it happen. And all of the ones I've talked about have all had epiphanies. So I could technically write any of them, really, so long as I sat down and thought about it and came up with, a plot and an outline. But right now, these musical aliens are messing with my brain, so they need to be written until they stop messing with me. That's how you cope when you're a writer, I suppose. Somebody wants Kevin's book. I don't know if I'll ever write Kevin's book. I know people love Kevin. This is what happens with side characters. You're like random redheaded straight dude stuck with all of these shifters. But he has never had an epiphany, so I don't know if Kevin is going to get a book. Somebody wants more Biffy. That's why I wrote Romancing the Werewolf. Just reread Romancing the Werewolf if you want more Biffy. There's all the Biffy you could ever want in that book. And now we have a fashion question. Switch modes! What do I think of hostess gowns and kafkans? I think they're wonderful. I am also pro the evening pajama, which is silky pajamas as formal wear, big in the 1930s, very fabulous. So yes, bring it on. The more the better is what I say. Hostess gowns, kafkans, and evening pajamas. And then finally somebody says, sooner or later, the Parasolverse, these books, will move into events mentioned in these books. Or will they? This is the point where I remind you that, of course, the two are not connected at all. They're even written by different people, right? Not connected. Wink, wink. Yes, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I have absolutely no interest in writing anything that involves a world war. So, because how could I make that funny? Even I would struggle to make this funny. So, there is a reason that there is a gap in my oeuvre. And partly it is corset tangential, and partly it is because I don't like the world wars. Blah. I don't want to write about them. No. So yes, generally speaking, as I say, my interest wanes, historically speaking, when the corset is no more, and then resurfaces when it comes back again. Aren't I flippant? But there it is. So, that is the state of the three universes, and the state of the Gale, and house dresses. Now, I can answer questions. Where does one go to buy evening pajamas? This is a great question. One assumes one would have to make one's own, sadly. Right, so if you have a question for me, please put a question mark at the beginning. That way I know it's a question. And when I'm looking at the comments popping up, because I see all of them all at once, I will know to focus in. Oh, the new lipstick. Doc wants to know about it. It's this one. Okay, it's this matte, and it is feathering a little bit, so but that might be because I had to wear it under a mask. This has been on since like 7 o'clock this morning, so it's been on for hours. It is called North Show, all one word. And the color I'm wearing is Mary Joke, and I freaking love this color. But I have to buy it as a sampler pack. I'll put a link in later, but yeah, you have to buy like the whole sampler pack, and there are some other cool colors in it, but it is this sort of matte semi-color stay, and I love the color, but it is, it's difficult to find. So, but I'll put in a link to Lippy. There. Right, so now, where to buy the evening pajamas? Other people are answering the evening pajama question, and I am now looking at questions. Will there be more Ivy? Ivy's a little bit like Lord Akaldama. She always kind of leaks in around the edges. The book that's currently in production, the third Delightfully Deadly book, has no Ivy. Sorry. There's an Ivy mention. This is an Ivy allusion, but no presence of Ivy. Although she is in reticence, of course. How about a comedy about the two worlds planning the war but getting sidetracked, so they never actually go to war? You mean just eliminate the world wars from my particular version of the universe? That might be fun. Anything's possible. It's just I don't know very much about history. I'm terrible on like modern history or, turn of the century, and so anytime I don't know about a time period, it means I'm stuck doing a lot of research, which means the book that I am writing will take that much longer. So that's why it's sort of up in the air that I would ever go there. And there's so much for me to write in the existing worlds that I already have planned. So I don't particularly feel inclined to connect the dots. Oh, where do we go earlier today? I don't know either, but we were just there. Lavender says, please feel free to demur on this question. I always feel free to demur. I even spin on occasion. But do I have a comment about the large amount of author and author fan drama that has been going on social media lately? Has there been drama? I've been decidedly not on social media. The last 2 weeks in particular, I had this deadline and I just was nose down getting this Parasol verse. It's technically novel length, but this novel, whatever it was, getting it done, the next Delightfully Deadly book. So I have no idea what's going on. None. I usually have writer chats on Tuesdays. I haven't done either of those in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even a month even. So yeah, I'm well out of touch. I have no idea. Sorry. So I have no comment. I'm sure I would. I do love gossiping, but I don't. When we know the title of the next Delightfully Deadly book, you notice that I'm being cagey about it. I don't say the title because when I do, somebody puts it up on Goodreads and the metadata is wrong. And you would not believe what a pain it is to correct the metadata. So I never announce it until I have all the metadata listed on my website. And by metadata, I mean its ISBN number and all that sort of information. So that's why I haven't announced the title yet. I'm not being intentionally precious about it or something. It's just that it's too much of a mess for me to fix if I announce early. So you will get it as soon as I have a release date, basically, because that's the other thing that happens. If I announce a title, everybody wants to know when the release date is, and so I'm just waiting. So it's turned in, and as I turned in, I was basically let me know as soon as you do when we're going to release this, but it needs to have a copy edit pass and everything. And that means somebody else's time frame, not mine anymore. So we're dependent on another professional. So it has to be slotted into their schedule. So I have to get in the queue with other authors to be copy edited and all that sort of thing. So yeah, so I'll tell you, I promise, I will let you know the title when I have a release date, because that's my new policy. And you can blame Goodreads. Claw and Courtship. That is this series. Woohoo! Look at me, all prepared with the books. Yes, so I also know who the next one is for this series, and I have a really good idea on writing it. But I don't know when that will happen. It is definitely the most likely thing for me to turn my attention to in the Parasol verse next, because the Delightfully Deadly books can exist as a trilogy that makes me very happy, which is not to say there won't necessarily be more in that series either, but 3 feels very comfortable to me and they feel very happy together. So I am probably gonna write more in this series next. So for the Parasol verse. So fingers crossed. So soonish, within a year, I would say, maybe 2. People are complimenting me, which is very nice. Sarah says, sentences from your book go through my head randomly and make me smile. Excellent! I'm glad my ridiculousness is there to amuse. That's why I exist. Am I still planning to come to Chicago Steampunk Expo in 2020? I think so. I don't know. That's very far away. And I am starting to do plan events this year. The end of this year, I will be in motion again. I've booked a hotel for a writing retreat in September. So I will at least be flying in September. Don't worry, I will be vaccinated by then. And I will take all necessary precautions. So I don't see why not. It is a matter of whether I'm still invited. It's still happening, and various other things. But it is 2022 is along my way. But I do love Chicago, so I am definitely hoping to go. Harley asks a very insidious question. Can I tell you what time frame Agatha's book is placed in? And that is a tricky question because the answer is all of them, which is why it took me so long to write this book. It is a broad scope book. It's one of the first things I've ever written that covers a long period of time. So it is almost kind of memoirish, reminiscent-y. It starts with Agatha as you have most recently met her, if you remember meeting her, in Reticence, and she is reflecting on her entire life as a spy. So the context of Agatha's book weaves in and out of the Finishing School series. It starts before the Finishing School series when she is recruited, through the Finishing School series, and then tangential to the Parasol Protectorate series, and then tangential to the Custard Protocol. So you get to see Agatha essentially in the background of all of the other books. It was not easy to write, but it was a lot of fun. And I think there's a lot of cookies and tasty little nibbles in it for you because of that. I think you'll enjoy it. But it is broad scope. And it is still a romance as well. So watch me be crafty. Very crafty. Why not have the lioness suggest polyamory? Isn't that the point of the last scene? I thought I made that clear. Maybe I didn't. But yes, the implication of the final scene of Reticence, spoilers, is that Lord Akaldama was in a poly relationship for a while, a long time ago, including a lioness. Some other lipsticks are being recommended. So feel free to read the comments and or recommend them yourself. Lavender says, I have hinted at the strange puritanical New World, any chance of heading to the colonies. That I had intended in this book. So we get a little bit of the United States because of Faith, because she's American. And Canada also interests me from the perspective of the Parasol verse. So it is definitely possible that it would be this series that would go there if I'm going to go there. Yeah. That was not a long answer. It happens sometimes. Ooh, Julia asks, heroine's journey question. Has an adaptation changed, removed the heroine's journey? I don't understand the question. Am I going to do a second edition? Is that what you're asking? Because no one's, I think it's still available. Please tell me if it's not available. That would not be good. I'll have to go fix it. But I checked my sales numbers on Friday and it looked like it was still up everywhere. So should be all right. Yes, Ty, I'm very, very tricksy, aren't I? So in Romancing the Human, when Lord Akaldama falls in love with the human that's in the past or present time. Past? Isn't it always in the past with Lord Akaldama? I don't understand the question, sorry, dog. Another friendly reminder that Worldcon 2020 is slated for Chicago as well. Ooh, I guess it'll be the year of Chicago. Maybe I'll just stay. Or just go to Chicago and stay. Yeah, I would like to go to Worldcon in Chicago, so as well as or instead of the Steampunk Con, if the Steampunk Con doesn't happen or whatever, I will be in Chicago. I will try to be in Chicago next year no matter what. How's that for a promise? Yay, Chicago. Ty, that would be a very funny story. Maybe that will be Sid Haig's book. Is everybody else trying to arrange a marriage for her? Or these two, like, complete grumps. That would be funny. Right. That looks like, is that it for questions? How exciting. Are we going to do a short live? Yes, everybody always wants a Lord Akeldama book, and the very idea of spending any length of time in Lord Akeldama's mind as a writer, or in his life in general, is exhausting to me. Like, truly exhausting, which is why there's no Lord Akeldama book. I just like him showing up in everything. It would be, you know, let's come up with an analogy. I love, Lord Akeldama is like pavlova, which is my favorite dessert. Pavlova is meringue and if you're lucky, clotted cream, and if you're lucky, a bunch of sour fruits like raspberries and strawberries and passion fruit and all that sort of a thing in this like great, messy, gorgeous, delicious, greatest dessert ever thing. I can and have eaten enough pavlova to make myself sick. Writing a whole book about Lord Akeldama would be like just having to eat multiple pavlovas. That's all I'm saying. It would be very challenging. It not like impossible because I love pavlova, but having an endless meal of pavlova, yeah, it just seems like it'd be really difficult is all I'm saying. So yes, the great question of the conversation in the comments is about Sid Haig and whether however her name is pronounced, and whether I would write her book. And the answer is perhaps. But the question with Sid Haig is always which line of novellas does a Sid Haig book go in? Does it go into the supernatural society because you better believe it's queer, or does it go into the delightfully deadly because it's Sid Haig? I don't know. Or does it maybe go into how to marry the how-to series because it involves a werewolf? Because it's Sid Haig. So, like, it kind of is all of the novella lines in one. I have seen Time Team. Yes, somebody asked me about Time Team. I've seen it. I don't remember. Yes, archaeology. Yeah. There's always a challenge to people who are experts in a field when a piece of popular culture infringes on that field, which is to say, by necessity, popular culture must sanitize and normalize, and not necessarily dumb down, but simplify the science in particular. And for anybody who's an expert in the field, it can drive you slightly insane to watch. So I don't tend to watch the things that popularize archaeology for reasons of sanity. So, what K-pop dramas are inspiring this Tinkered Star story? I hesitate to say that I am a fan of anything, particularly music, because I have terrible taste, and I'm a dancer by inclination. So pretty much I like anything that makes me want to dance, which is a lot of K-pop. K-pop is dance music, and it has choreographed pieces to it. So I really like the dancing aspect of it. But it means like I'm pretty indiscriminate where music is concerned. If it makes me want to bounce around, I'm probably going to enjoy it. So this is fun for people with me at a party or a wedding, for example, because I'm always the first person on the dance floor. It does not matter what dance it is. I will join in. Is it polka, line dancing, country? I don't care. Can I learn a step? I will learn a step and do the thing. So I got into K-pop mostly because of that. And because it's all anybody is talking about right now on YouTube. So I don't have a group I love or anything like that. I kind of just like them all. Dramas, I got into Thai dramas actually specifically because they do a lot of gay stuff. And then I discovered that Taiwan has a really large queer drama oeuvre, so I got into Taiwanese stuff, and then I got into, and Korea also as well, it turns out, has stealthily hidden. So yeah, I've been watching Asian dramas in general and learning very interesting things about, like, you know, queer acceptance, homophobia in different countries and different parts of the world. So it's been very educational, and a lot of fun. So yeah, I have tons of recommendations if you want to hit me up. And specifically for this alien thing, it's just, I went on a deep dive into the problematic side, shall we say, of the K-pop industry, because it is an industry and it is tailored to visuals, and they're very restrictive and controlling over their idols and their talent, the production companies. And, you know, that just kind of, it's creepy, but it interests me in terms of how that is also applied to Hollywood, and how sort of the plastic nature of fame, the idea of fan obsession, and the kind of worshipful nature, the way, especially for some of the young people who are really into these K-pop groups, these idols, and they're called idols, which, like, that's already like, interesting religious terminology. But there's this, like, real transportive religious experience for some of the super fanatics of this musical genre. Not that this has not happened with music or actors and actresses and such in the past, but, you know, like, I'm so old and I'm at such a distance now from this sort of behavior, and I was never like that. I've never, like I said, I've never been really into music, so I've never had the sort of transportive concert experience or anything like that. And so that sort of obsessive, worshipful nature, and the way it certainly at some points in our lives as, like, teenagers or young adults, fame, or the perception of fame, can be religious. It can have a religious component to it, a worshipful, transportive component that's not unlike, you know, the ancient Greeks tearing their hair out in mourning, or upon meeting a gladiator for the first time, and that sort of thing. So I guess it's sort of I'm just really interested in this quality of human nature that breeds this kind of, the way art can transport, not just in the way a writer does, but in the way a personality does, from a kind of a visual perspective through art. I don't know. So I'm very interested in that, and, you know, kind of how that interrelates to sort of stalker behavior and all of this other, like, human psychoses. So that's kind of, I know it's very serious for me, but that's sort of where I am with this book, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. Will there ever be a longer Mana story beyond Vixen ecology, or is she kind of like Lord Akeldama? I think Mana is a little bit like Lord Akeldama, where she, you know, kind of is so much larger than life that her impact, were she to have too much of her own story, would be diminished by an effort to curtail her into a single point narrative. For me, that's how I feel about it. Now that I'm writing again, have I paused my drama watching? I'm certainly not watching as much as I was. That's absolutely true. When I'm writing a lot, I tend to dial back on consuming media in general, whether that's visual or reading. If I'm really heavily writing a book, which I am right now, I tend to just, like, not watch that much television or anything. I have a few dramas that are kind of currently airing that I'm following, and like Word of Honor, which just finished up, which I have to say the ending is problematical, so I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it, although it's a great drama. It's a Chinese drama, so it's a gay romance, but it's historical, but it's heavily censored. So just, you know, be aware of that. I recommended it in my newsletter a little while ago. It is 36 episodes of beautiful men in beautiful robes doing beautiful martial arts with a big fan and a very flexible sword and lots of innuendo, but no culmination to that innuendo. So there it is. So that one just finished, thank heaven, so I don't have to be taken with that anymore. But yeah, so I'm not really watching as much as I was, to answer that question. How is the animated series going? So no word at the moment. We're hoping to have a conference call in the not too distant future, and I'll let you know if there's any information when I know, which is pretty much how it goes with Hollywood. The 1-star review I posted lately says Lavender. Any others that stand out because of their silliness? You know, I honestly should collect more bad reviews, because some bad reviews are so pitch perfect in their attempts to be insulting. But honestly, I have a proactive policy of never reading bad reviews. That one just came through my radar because it was so early on in my career. You know, it was, you know, six years ago or something. But generally speaking, I don't read bad reviews. I just have a standard policy of not reading bad reviews. I get too upset and depressed about them. There's definitely that thing with the human psyche where I get compliments and I'm so excited about it, but the sensation of thrill of that goes rather quickly. But if I read one bad, evil thing, or someone misconstrues me on the internet, it wrecks my day. So my solution is just not to, which is one of the reasons I haven't been that much on social media recently, because it's just generally been rather negative, and I try to avoid that. It just mucks with my head, and I don't want to, so I just don't. Yes, Natalie says, have I heard about the Russian that was forced to stay on a Chinese show about making a boy band? Yeah, I did. I heard about that. I saw and a big reason they loved him so much was because he was so gorgeous, by industry standards. So, yeah, I did read about that. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. He just was begging to be voted off, and they kept voting for him. I have thought about having a reality TV show element to this book that I'm working on, but I don't think it works, and it's been done in sci-fi a couple of times now, so I feel it's a little derivative, so I don't have a reality TV show component. Do I have an explanation as to why in Victorian times people thought that they had to be talented in the arts in order to transition? Is there an explanation for the supposed loss of those talents? Good question. I don't know. Maybe, probably. I could come up with one if I had to. I've never had to, so I haven't. Isn't that typical of me? You know, it's like weighing the soul. Victorians had very strange scientific explanations for very strange things. It's kind of what they did. Spirituality, religion, and science were not segregated in the way that we think of them as like disparate things now. Back in Victorian times and prior to that, they were all wrapped up together. So your sort of philosophical musings involved all of those things at any one time. So your explanations for science, for, you know, naturally occurring phenomena was often an amalgam of all of these things. Oh God, sports anime. I don't think sports anime is in my future. The one, it's really interesting. So you might not find this interesting. I find it interesting. I used to read manga, and I have had dabbled in a little bit of anime, but it's like I skipped anime. Like, I feel like most geeks go through a big anime phase, but I just never did. I had a big manga phase, and then crickets, and now Asian dramas. I feel like most people my age, at least, went manga, anime, dramas, but I just sort of skipped the middle part. So I've never gotten into anime in a big way. Although I will talk your ear off about Ranma 1/2 and Saber Rider and the Star Sheriffs, should you ever buy me enough alcohol to get me started on the great and fateful anime of the late 1980s. Have I eaten anything interesting lately? Well, I had a lovely ginger cookie, yummy and chewy. I do like a chewy cookie. But I haven't, well, you know, I haven't traveled, so I haven't had an opportunity to eat anything exciting. Soon this will change. Ty wants to know if I've read any good FF lately. Lesbian romance. What did I read recently? I feel like it was like I'm behind the times on all of my reading, obviously, because I stopped reading for a while, but I feel like it was the Courtney Milan femme romance that she did recently. That was pretty good. With older characters. Anyway. But nothing is jumping out at me. Moving along. Ty is saying that we are, yep, we're getting there. So we're getting some last questions. Looking for other questions for me. There's lots of conversations going on, which I would love to horn in on. They seem very interesting, but we're gotta stay on target. Shannon wants to know if I wrote anything prior to the Parasol Protectorate books, or was Solace the first novel I'd ever written? Like most people, I think I have quite a few what authors would call trunk novels, which is novels that have been safely stashed away in a trunk and are not fit for human consumption. I have several of those, and yeah. So no, Solace was not the first thing I wrote by a long shot. I think it was maybe my 10th novel-length work. And don't go getting excited that there's other stuff, because I went and looked at some of the stuff I wrote prior to Solace, and it is not good. And it's not really my voice either. You know, it doesn't have the humorous silliness that that leaks in no matter what I do. So yeah, I've written stuff. I wrote quite a bit before Solace, but it is unpublished and unpublishable. Thank heavens. It's one of the things that scares me about the internet with younger writers, is that it's awfully easy just to stick it up there. And but you know, maybe this is just me and my personality. I'm truly horrified by the idea that anyone would have ever read anything I wrote prior to Solace. That's scary. That is a scary thought. But maybe people are more forgiving. I have read, Olivia White wrote The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, and I've read that, and it's excellent, and I recommend it. I don't know if I've read any more, but that one is really good, right? That's Olivia White. Lavender says, it's so fascinating to watch cultures try to explain the world as science develops. I totally agree. Transition technology was something that my, and kind of the human perception of reality as altered by the advent of technology was something that I was working my PhD on. So it's very, you know, things like the vital humors, the terminology that's come up. I mean, obviously I'm fascinated by it because I borrow the aether, right? I borrow these things and use them. Brimstone, the concept of brimstone as being the idea that something catches on fire because fire is inherently inside it. Like, those are very logical explanations. But now we know them to be quite flawed. But that's so interesting to me, the idea of how we understand the world and how it shifts. But that's very philosophical, isn't it? Can you tell? I have a minor in epistemology, which is the philosophical study of human knowledge. Have I gotten an arc of the new TJ Klein book? Let's be fair, I don't think he needs me anymore, so they don't need to send me an arc. He's doing fine. It has a house on a cover. It's Cerulean Sea vibes. I would suggest that it's probably in that vein. I think it's the same publisher, Tor, and the same editor, and they would ask for something quite similar. I've heard that it's good, but no, I haven't gotten an arc, and I haven't, although, to be fair, I haven't asked for one either. But yes, I'm hoping. I mean, he's always good, so. Lots of good book recommendations in the comments. How many beta readers do your books get before it goes to an agent? Oh, that's an interesting question, partly because it indicates a flaw in the logic. This is the process of writing a book for me. It is, I have an idea for a book. If it's not under contract, I tend to, this day and age, write the book, which means I write everything. It's called on spec, which means on speculation, which means it's not under contract to anybody. This last Parasolverse book was an aberrant, for reasons that I won't go into, in that I was always going to write it myself for you all. But I happened to put a mini contract in place for first American serial rights, which is a little bit like writing a story for an anthology. So it had a deadline, but it's not a like very serious deadline. It's not a deadline in the same way that like a Parasol Protectorate book deadline would have been. Anyway, so I write the thing. Then I usually do so I write relatively clean. My spelling and grammar is atrocious. And then I do a visual, so this is all in Scrivener. I do a visual pass and I rearrange everything and I incorporate a bunch of notes that, like, as I'm writing, I've come up with things that I need to fix, but I don't want to stop writing, so I'll go back and fix them. My friend Dan and I talk about this on the NaNoWriMo podcast, which is Everyday Novelist. So we talked a lot about our process during the course of NaNoWriMo last year. But essentially, I've decided, and he's because of him, to call this a hot pass. So basically, that is you write the rough draft, and then you immediately go back and reread the whole thing because the whole story is still fresh in your head, and you want to like catch all of the notes that you wrote to yourself and fix any mistakes you make. So I do that. So that is essentially my first draft. It's the draft that has everything in it. Then I try to put the thing to bed for at least a month, often 2 months. Then I will come back to it and I'll do a regular reread and then I'll do an audio read. So I'll read the whole thing out loud to an empty room. That's when I catch most of my major mistakes. I highly recommend it. When you're rereading that way, you engage a different part of your brain when you're audio processing rather than just visual processing. And so then I do that. It also helps me catch sing-songness to my prose and stuff that's going funky with the voice for a book, that sort of thing. So that's at about 3 or 4 passes at that juncture. Sometimes I'll do another revision. Then I have a developmental editor. So that is a person who I pay to do a developmental edit, which is editing about character and story. It has nothing to do with typos or anything like that. That's Sue. So, and she's paid. So the book goes off to her. I usually book her at the beginning of the year for 2 time slots every year, and she'll always get something from me. There'll always be something written during those 2 time slots. And she's generally pretty flexible about working with me. We have a good pattern. She's done all of my novellas so far. All of the indie stuff that I've published, Sue has been my dev editor on. She's great. I highly recommend her. Anyways, she does mostly romance, but she will do a couple of other things. Anyway, it's the romance aspects of my books that I tend to struggle with the most. I have a pretty good handle on like the sci-fi fantasy, the humor, and all that sort of thing. So I hired her specifically because her specialty is romance, because I feel like I naturally write heavily sci-fi fantasy anyway, because that's what I grew up reading. That's what most of my history is as an author. So it's the romantic elements that I want to make sure are paced properly and developed correctly within the confines of the story. So that's why I use Sue for most of my independently published stuff. So and then it comes back to me, so I do another revision after a dev pass. That's usually a bit of a complicated revision because it will be aspects of plot, story, pacing, and characterization that I need to be fixing. So that usually takes me quite a couple of weeks to do. And then under normal circumstances, it goes to my beta readers at that juncture. And then the beta readers, I have 4 of them, and they read linearly. So we turn track changes on, and they'll each have a different color, and then they'll go from one to the next to the next. And there's no set pattern of who reads first. It's really dependent on their schedules and their timing and their availability. So whoever can take it right away takes it immediately, and then it goes from one to the other. And they see each other's comments. And I do that intentionally because they'll argue with each other. So one of them will suggest a correction, or one of them will say, I don't think this is the correct year. And then they'll have a debate back and forth in the margins. And that's actually really helpful for me, because when they disagree, then sometimes, then I have flexibility. If they all agree on something, then I absolutely have to fix it. And my beta readers, they've been with me for a very long time now. And they really kind of know what to look for and what to target. And they are mostly people who regularly reread all of my books, so they're very familiar with the universe. And they do a lot of in-world continuity checking. So really simple things like making sure the characters have the right eye color, and really complicated things like, you say decade here, but I think you mean century because you said he was this age 4 books ago. You know, like real deep, they're amazing at that kind of thing. And they can take from 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes a little longer to get through, but they have always caught a major problem, a major error that I have made in every single one of my books. So they are utterly invaluable. They're great, because guess who catches those errors? You do. Someone out there reading, that's the kind of stuff that they catch. So that is why I have beta readers still at this point in my career, is because I have such a vast world that I write in, and I don't want to contradict myself, or I want to contradict myself as little as possible. Or if I contradict myself, I want to be able to lamplight it and talk about it as if it were intentional. Or, you know, I have to create a new world rule in order to compensate if I can't do anything else. So yeah, so that's what my beta readers are like. And then the document gets turned into my editor. So my agent isn't even part of it. Poor agent. Generally speaking, my agent will ping me and be like, will you send me the manuscript, because she is my foreign agent, she is my Hollywood agent, or she has my connection to my Hollywood agent. So she does get a copy of everything I write, but sometimes I forget to send it to her. So like with the most recent book, Agatha's book, I sent that to both the publisher and my agent at the same time so that she would have a version of it, so I wouldn't forget. But yes. So when it's an on-spec book that I think might be good for traditional publisher, then I will send it to my agent. And I will usually give her a heads up and be like, I'm sending this thing, agent. So sometimes she gets it. That is only brand new stuff. So the techno fantasy that I talked about, she got that recently, but my beta readers have never seen it. There's no point. It's not in that universe. There's no point in sending it to them. Although they tend to be very sweet about this sort of thing and willing to read anyway. But I also don't want to waste their time if I need to do a major revision on something. So I want to give my beta readers as quality a piece as possible so that they can really focus on catching the errors that I need them to catch, and they're not stuck in the mud on a billion typos or anything. So that's the process. I know, terribly complicated, but that's kind of why it takes me so long to write something is, you know, there's me writing it, which takes as long as it takes, but there's this whole revision process that I go through. Shannon asks if I have Scrivener templates that I use to write my books. Yes. Although most commonly now I simply copy the previous whole book in Scrivener and then delete everything out of it and use that as the template for the next one in the series, especially if I'm sharing characters. So like the San Andreas books they're just the same, are just repeated over and over and over again. To do it correctly, I think I probably should just write all of the books in one series within one Scrivener template, but I don't know, whatever works, right? There's something very satisfying about having a brand new template, each new document, new project, I guess is what it's called in Scrivener. Will we be introduced to more new types of shapeshifters in the next San Andreas book, or not in the Agatha book, not in the Parasolve book that's coming out? In the San Andreas book, I seem to be unable to put down any shifters, so it's definitely possible that there will be new shifters. It's always possible that there are new shifters, because I like shifters. Nicole is fretting that they have not put a question mark in their questions, and I'm sorry, Nicole. It means I missed them all. And we are soon to be done, so I am scrolling through looking for any very last questions because I don't want to have missed. If I have missed your question, I apologize profusely. I do try to go back and look at the questions and answer them typey if I missed any of them. But I don't think I have. But I think we're gonna wrap this one up. Thank you all for sticking with me and asking questions and listening to the live and hearing me talk gerbil on about my universes and my writing processes and everything. Yes, I love you so much, everybody. Thank you so much. And for wasting a Saturday afternoon, evening, whatever it is for you with me. And yes, I hope you're looking forward to new stuff. I will bring, it's coming. New stuff is coming for you. Yes, the techno fantasy is about to enter the zeitgeist in strange ways, and I am probably going to be asking the newsletter to weigh in a serious manner with that book. So if you want to be heavily involved in the next book that I'm working on, the newsletter is going to be the place, the cheer up. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled and take care, and best of luck to all of you with the spring. I'll see you next month.